In a high-rise building in New York City, precisely in the penthouse owned by Seo Joo-Heon, a TV channel was seen broadcasting a news about the chaos that befell the party held by Pandora. There were also some people blaming Pandora for committing violence and causing several injuries at the party. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon, who saw the news, just laughed happily because Pandora was in chaos now. Irene, who had just arrived, was a little worried because the party had to end in chaos, but Seo Joo-Heon asked Irene not to worry about it because she had gotten Austin's relic now. Because Seo Joo-Heon took Austin's relic, the title of King of Propagation is now vacant, and this makes Seo Joo-Heon believe that the future will change again, like what happened to Miller's sister who died. Because the future that keeps changing makes Seo Joo-Heon a little troubled because everything doesn't go like the previous life, and that's why Seo Joo-Heon must start thinking about everything himself and not stick to the previous life. There was a cry for help from Yoo Ji-ha when Seo Joo-Heon was trying to think of the next step. Yoo Ji-ha came to see Seo Joo-Heon in the living room. Yoo Ji-ha said that Seo Joo-Heon's rope relic was acting strange when he tried to fix it. But Seo Joo-Heon didn't have the same thoughts as Yoo Ji-ha and instead found the weirdness to be funny. Seo Joo-Heon asked Yoo Ji-ha to prove that the relic rope was acting weird. Yoo Ji-ha proved it by him trying to kindly touch the rope relic, but before Yoo Ji-ha could touch it, the rope relic was angry and instead strangled Yoo Ji-ha's neck. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon, who saw Yoo Ji-ha being strangled by the rope relic, just looked at him with a little doubt. Seo Joo-Heon also told the rope relic to come to him because it looked like Yoo Ji-ha was about to lose consciousness. But when Seo Joo-Heon called the rope relic instead acted kind and funny in front of Seo Joo-Heon. The rope relic said that he did not want to be repaired because it felt strange to him. After saying that, Seo Joo-Heon was surprised when he saw a light shining coming from the relic. The rope relic had transformed now into a rope with a silver color. Another notification window appeared saying that the rope relic did not want to be controlled by other people. Seo Joo-Heon thought of something when Austin tried to make the rope relic obey him, and since the relic did not have an owner, it should have obeyed Austin at that time. But what happened instead was that the rope relic refused to obey Austin and attacked him back. It was seen that the name of the relic had changed to multi-usage silver sky rope, and the rank of the rope relic had increased now and turned into a possessive type relic. Seo Joo-Heon remained silent as his relic became stronger. Yoo Ji-ha and Seo Joo-Heon were both puzzled that the relic could increase its own power, and since the rope relic did not have an owner, the relic made a contract with Seo Joo-Heon now. Yoo Ji-ha was relieved because now the relic did not need to be repaired, and as Yoo Ji-ha said about the risk, a notification window appeared, and it seemed that the risk that Seo Joo-Heon would accept was that she had to praise the rope. Hearing that, Yoo Ji-ha laughed happily. The two of them left the room with the relic rope still on Seo Joo-Heon's head. When Seo Joo-Heon left the room, she got a new title as Relic Trainer, and now her compatibility power increased because of the title. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw it, became very happy because compatibility is very difficult to increase in a normal way. Yoo Ji-ha only saw Seo Joo-Heon, who wanted to try to increase all the relics he had, and said that he would do some research using relics. Meanwhile, in Pandora's building, Pandora's officials were seen gathering because of the losses they suffered from the party they held yesterday. Their plan to gather talented relic users to enter Pandora failed because the party had been stopped when one person proposed to organize another party. The host did not agree with the proposal because several small and large tombs had sprung up around the world, and the 7 great tombs would soon appear. And with the emergence of the 7 great tombs, it is possible that more powerful relics will appear from the tombs. That's why Pandora must master the tombs so that they will become one of the strongest relic holders in the world. Everyone who came to the event seemed to agree with the host's words, and immediately the host said that they needed more people to carry out this plan. Everyone there became very excited to find new people. One of the people there suddenly proposed to find people and recruit them individually using the system from Pandora. After that, the host changed the screen behind him with a list of names of 50 people who would be the next candidates, starting from CEO Kwon, Austin, Richard, Julian Miller, Irene Holton, Edward, and finally Yoo Ji-ha. But before they finished, one of his subordinates whispered something to the host. The host also talked again about one of the strongest people among the people he mentioned earlier. They took this person because he was a very unfamiliar person named Seo Joo-Heon, a user with the highest number of relics, which was 50 relics. Immediately, everyone became excited when he heard the strength and number of relics that Seo Joo-Heon had managed to collect. The host continued if Seo Joo-Heon had formed an alliance with several people whose names were on the screen at this moment. Seo Joo-Heon is the enemy of Pandora now. That's why Pandora didn't recruit him. Hearing that, everyone became more excited because Seo Joo-Heon was declared as Pandora's enemy. But the host calmed the excited crowd because now Pandora is superior to Seo Joo-Heon. They have information about the 7 great tombs and many talented people are with Pandora right now. And that's why Seo Joo-Heon will not be able to enter the 7 great tombs without information from Pandora. What exactly are the 7 great tombs? And what will Seo Joo-Heon do to get this important information? Seo Joo-Heon was reading his notification window about how he could upgrade his relic. There were some terms and conditions visible in his notification window. Seo Joo-Heon seemed to be thinking about how to upgrade his relic tier, but it seemed that Seo Joo-Heon was having a little trouble, so he had to ask the crow for help to explain it more deeply. But it seemed that the question asked by Seo Joo-Heon was only answered with silence because the crow did not give him any answer. Giving up on the crow, who didn't give him a deeper explanation, Seo Joo-Heon finally decided to ask his relic, but it seemed like Seo Joo-Heon's relic didn't know anything about the level increase or tier of a relic. Yoo Ji-ha saw Seo Joo-Heon, who was starting to get upset because he never found the answer. Yoo Ji-ha saw Seo Joo-Heon, who gave up on what he was doing, and told Seo Joo-Heon to watch the news on TV. The news on TV was about several tombs that began to appear in various parts of the world. What made it special was because there was a pattern if drawn on a map. Seo Joo-Heon saw something interesting now. The team from Pandora didn't even want to provide more information about the tombs that had appeared. Yoo Ji-ha was surprised when he found out that Seo Joo-Heon knew about the appearance of the tombs. Seo Joo-Heon then explained to Yoo Ji-ha about the 7 great tombs. Seo Joo-Heon was a little shocked by his memory because the appearance of the 7 great tombs should have occurred several years in the future. The 7 great tombs are several tombs that have a larger scale and more dangerous than the usual tombs. But inside them are very valuable relics. The 7 great tombs have relics associated with the 7 deadly sin, and the Arceus relic belonging to Seo Joo-Heon was also contained in one of the 7 tombs, precisely from the Tomb of Greed. Everyone who has one of the relics in the 7 tombs has the title of king. Seo Joo-Heon also plans to go to the place where the tombs are located before Pandora does, but because of the high level of difficulty, Seo Joo-Heon rethinks the plan he will do to conquer the tombs. At least someone must have a relic that will greatly help him. Not only that, Seo Joo-Heon also needs to make a team so that he can conquer the tombs. Because Seo Joo-Heon did not want to cause trouble for him by recruiting people who did not have good abilities, he thought of upgrading his relic, but he did not know how to do it. Seo Joo-Heon also took the relic Zoroaster's Avesta and intended to use it as something that would increase his popularity. Seo Joo-Heon also smiled mysteriously because he would immediately get many followers if he used this relic. Seo Joo-Heon also used the power of the relic to make him a priest, but several notification windows appeared, and it seemed that Seo Joo-Heon was not qualified to become a priest, because he had to have followers first. Seo Joo-Heon, who was annoyed, slammed the relic and stepped on it. Seo Joo-Heon again thought about Austin, who was a celebrity, and that made him able to use this Avesta relic because gaining followers as a celebrity was very easy. Seo Joo-Heon also asked Yoo Ji-ha about what exactly Austin did until he became famous like that. Yoo Ji-ha began to say that Austin was an actor as well as a singer, and Austin was also a novelist. Hearing the word novelist, Seo Joo-Heon got the idea to use this way as a way for him to get fans. In the end, Seo Joo-Heon also did research with the novel written by Austin. But after reading it, Seo Joo-Heon couldn't understand how a novel like this could become so famous. Seo Joo-Heon's voice attracted the attention of Oh Seung-woo, who was working, and when he came, he saw Seo Joo-Heon, who was reading Austin's novel. Seeing Oh Seung-woo who came, Seo Joo-Heon asked his concern because Austin's novel contained lewd things in it. After hearing the input from Oh Seung-woo, Seo Joo-Heon closed the novel and intended to make something better than Austin's novel. Seo Joo-Heon left Oh Seung-woo, who was still confused with Seo Joo-Heon, who suddenly wanted to make a novel. After that, Seo Joo-Heon wrote his own novel for hours and hours, and after all he did, Seo Joo-Heon felt good when he wrote his novel. When night fell, Seo Joo-Heon had completed his work on the novel even though it was still in the early stages, but Seo Joo-Heon was satisfied with the results. He also told Yoo Ji-ha and his subordinates to assess the novel he had made. Seo Joo-Heon felt confident with his novel now. He confidently looked at Yoo Ji-ha and his subordinates who seemed to be reading his novel carefully. There were several different faces and expressions shown by those who read Seo Joo-Heon's novel, and with his confidence level at its maximum, Seo Joo-Heon had thought that there would be a publisher who would publish his novel. Seo Joo-Heon was still feeling arrogant now because he thought that his novel would become a work that was loved by many people. After a while, Seo Joo-Heon called Yoo Ji-ha and asked him to give an assessment of the novel he had made. Yoo Ji-ha, who did not want to break the heart of Seo Joo-Heon, he answered him reluctantly, and a little lie was clearly visible on his face. Seo Joo-Heon asked Yoo Ji-ha to be honest with him about the novel he made and gave threats so that Yoo Ji-ha, who was frightened, was telling the truth. There were some words that pierced Seo Joo-Heon's heart from Yoo Ji-ha, who said that the novel was very boring and there was nothing perverted there even though the genre was smut. Besides that, the novel only contained relics. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard all that, felt his heart hurt and did not accept it because he thought that relics were the best thing that had ever existed in this era. Even besides, Yoo Ji-ha, one of his subordinates, also criticized because some words that they did not understand were written in the novel, such as the word Siberian, which according to Seo Joo-Heon meant very cold, and several other words that were difficult to understand. Seo Joo-Heon, who knew that his subordinates did not understand the language he used, was a little disappointed, and with all the criticism attacks that hurt Seo Joo-Heon, he chose to leave because he thought that writing novels was very difficult and not suitable for him. That's why Seo Joo-Heon gave up on writing other novels and preferred to conquer the tombs. How will Seo Joo-Heon increase her followers now? Seen Yoo-Ji-ha, who was repairing Seo Joo-Heon's relic that was not finished because it was very large. Seo Joo-Heon entered Yoo-Ji-ha's room with a backpack and asked Yoo-Ji-ha to pack his relic and leave now. Yoo-Ji-ha was surprised because suddenly Seo Joo-Heon invited him to go to Japan. Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo-Ji-ha were looking at a news story that said that there were a lot of people who disappeared in Japan and all those who disappeared were women. Seo Joo-Heon also said that the harem relic could do this. Yoo-Ji-ha was certainly confused by the relic because this was the first time hearing a relic with such power. Seo Joo-Heon was not interested in the relic because its power could only seduce women, but it seemed that Yoo-Ji-ha thought otherwise as his face was very happy to hear the power of the relic. But immediately Yoo-Ji-ha became a grin who knew that Seo Joo-Heon intended to use the relic to increase his fans. Because his goal was only to make a contract with the Avesta relic, the two of them decided to immediately leave for Kyoto Prefecture in Japan. Meanwhile, in a forest in Japan, there were two policemen who were patrolling to look for the missing women, but in the same forest Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo-Ji-ha were seen sneaking away from the police's sight. Yoo-Ji-ha, who saw the news from his cell phone, felt something wrong and horrified at the same time because many women suddenly disappeared without a trace and several policemen were found dead while searching. And of all the relics that have this kind of power, only one relic belongs to King Uia, who is famous for having 3,000 concubines, or relic belonging to Casanova. But both relics cannot kill a person, and it is only possible if this relic is accompanied by another relic that can kill people. Seo Joo-Heon also left Yoo-Ji-ha alone and moved to look for a clue. Meanwhile, with two policemen who were still patrolling in the forest, they felt something approaching towards them about to attack them. Because they did not have enough time to react, they could only be surprised when Seo Joo-Heon attacked them very quickly. After successfully making the policeman unconscious, Seo Joo-Heon heard the sound of someone shouting. Seo Joo-Heon thought that it was another policeman who was patrolling. Meanwhile, several women were seen who had been controlled by something that made them come to the policeman strangely. The policeman became confused with what exactly happened to the women, and with the weapons that the women held, they began to attack the policeman. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard the sound of shouting from the direction of the policeman, was surprised when he saw the women attacking the policeman there with the weapons they were using. Seo Joo-Heon tried to analyze the situation, and he thought that the women were not only affected by the relic harem, but there seemed to be something else that made them attack the policeman. There was a footstep from behind Seo Joo-Heon, and just as Seo Joo-Heon looked back, he was surrounded by the women who had been completely controlled. Seo Joo-Heon tried not to hurt the women, but one of the women jumped up and attacked Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon could only dodge because she didn't want to hurt them, and when Seo Joo-Heon avoided them, she saw the figure of a woman she knew. When the woman turned around, it turned out to be Sasaki, a girl that Seo Joo-Heon had met before. Because he had no other choice, Seo Joo-Heon took out his relic and started attacking the women, but only to make them unconscious, and tried not to hurt them. Now, Seo Joo-Heon faced Sasaki, who had a knife in her hand. Sasaki attacked Seo Joo-Heon with a knife, but Seo Joo-Heon easily threw the knife held by Sasaki, and as Sasaki's knife was thrown, Seo Joo-Heon moved behind her and blocked Sasaki's movement with her relic. Seo Joo-Heon tried to awaken the affected Sasaki by mentioning some of the things they had been through together. And as soon as Seo Joo-Heon mentioned Sasaki's name, Sasaki came to her senses, and the influence of the harem relic disappeared after she heard the voice of Seo Joo-Heon. Seeing Sasaki, who began to wake up, Seo Joo-Heon was satisfied that he could wake up the girl. while with Yoo-Ji-ha, who was still faithfully waiting for Seo Joo-Heon to return. Yoo-Ji-ha was seen playing with his cell phone before finally a voice sounded in his ear. Yoo-Ji-ha turned to the source of the sound and he saw Seo Joo-Heon, who was carrying a girl in his hand. Yoo-Ji-ha, who saw Seo Joo-Heon coming with a girl, asked about the girl. Seo Joo-Heon explained that Sasaki was one of his acquaintances and he brought her here because Seo Joo-Heon saw her when she was in the forest earlier. Seo Joo-Heon called Sasaki, who seemed to have just woken up from her stupor. Seo Joo-Heon asked Sasaki about what really happened to her and why she could be controlled so easily. Sasaki then revealed everything. The name Simon was heard from the explanation of Sasaki, who was the mastermind behind all this. Hearing the explanation from Sasaki, Seo Joo-Heon could only assume that the American was one of Kira's subordinates. Many hypnotized people are scattered throughout the city of Kyoto now. Even the number has reached 2,000 now. Seo Joo-Heon felt that there was something strange about the ability of the women when Seo Joo-Heon fought with them, and he was sure that this could not be done by the harem relic that could only seduce the women. And Seo Joo-Heon's assumption was justified by Sasaki, who said that this person named Simon had a relic with the necromancy type. Seo Joo-Heon thought that Simon was a strange pervert because he only controlled women by using the relic with the necromancy type. Sasaki also said that approaching Simon would be a new problem with the women guarding him. Seo Joo-Heon agreed with Sasai because facing 2,000 people who could fight would be very troublesome even if it was Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon had other plans now, but he had to return to the hotel to do so. Seo Joo-Heon also told Sasaki to leave, and after giving him money to go home. Sasaki called Seo Joo-Heon again and his face looked twinkling, fascinated with Seo Joo-Heon, who had saved him again now after the previous incident where Seo Joo-Heon destroyed the relic that endangered Sasaki's life. But the words of Seo Joo-Heon that he just said made Sasaki sad and felt his heart was broken because the reason Seo Joo-Heon saved him, because he thought that the relic would only trouble him. Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo-Ji-ha walked away with Yoo-Ji-ha, who became upset because he saw the popular Seo Joo-Heon. But as the two of them walked, a notification window was opened. A notification window popped up telling Seo Joo-Heon if she had gotten 4 fans now. Seo Joo-Heon was confused because other than Sasaki, she didn't think she had gotten 4 fans now. Who are Seo Joo-Heon's fans besides Sasaki? And what will Seo Joo-Heon do now? Seen Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo-Ji-ha, who had arrived at his hotel now, it seemed that they were talking about something about the relic Anubis. Yoo-Ji-ha was confused why Seo Joo-Heon would use the relic Anubis that he had not repaired because of the request of Seo Joo-Heon himself, who asked him not to repair it. Seo Joo-Heon also asked Yoo-Ji-ha to follow him now because he was going to do dog training. After they arrived at a quiet park, Seo Joo-Heon threw the relic of Anubis unceremoniously and told him to get out of the relic. As soon as the relic slammed on the ground, Anubis appeared in front of them. Seo Joo-Heon smiled as he saw Anubis in front of him. But Anubis, who saw Seo Joo-Heon, became angry at him, but as he was about to attack, his body could not move, and Anubis fell on the ground. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw Anubis who fell down, now made an offer with Anubis if Seo Joo-Heon would let Yoo-Ji-ha to repair Anubis' relic if Anubis was willing to make a contract with him. But Anubis, who had high self-esteem, rejected the offer from Seo Joo-Heon. Hearing Anubis who rejected his offer, Seo Joo-Heon took out his rope relic to tie Anubis' neck. Anubis was angry and upset. Anubis was angry and annoyed at Seo Joo-Heon for treating him like a common dog and started to order Anubis around. But when Anubis protested to Seo Joo-Heon, the leash relic tightened its bonds to suffocate Anubis and scolded Anubis for doing Seo Joo-Heon's orders. Anubis also talked to the leash relic to help him because they were both relic and the leash relic should not obey Seo Joo-Heon. But the rope relic, who heard Anubis mocking his master, tightened his bonds, making Anubis even more suffocated. Seo Joo-Heon also told Anubis to put his claws on Seo Joo-Heon's hands, and the rope relic forced Anubis to do what Seo Joo-Heon told him. Anubis also had a plan if he would become obedient to Seo Joo-Heon now and think of a cunning plan in the future. Anubis did all the orders that Seo Joo-Heon gave him, but because of his high pride as a god, Anubis refused Seo Joo-Heon's orders, and it succeeded in making the rope relic angry at Anubis and dragged him to pick up the ball that Seo Joo-Heon threw earlier. But Seo Joo-Heon was a little confused because it was the rope relic that brought the ball to him, not Anubis. Seo Joo-Heon intended to throw the ball once again. Anubis, who heard that, was surprised because if the rope relic dragged him again, then he would really die. Because he had no other choice. When Seo Joo-Heon threw the ball quickly, Anubis ran and caught the ball. Seo Joo-Heon felt happy and proud because Anubis caught the ball he threw, and it kept repeating, making Anubis feel sad because his pride as one of the gods was meaningless in front of Seo Joo-Heon and the rope relic. After feeling enough, Seo Joo-Heon returned to discuss his contract with Anubis. Anubis also gave conditions for Seo Joo-Heon if he wanted to form a contract with him, and said that Seo Joo-Heon must be able to make decisions with a cool head and have felt on the verge of death. And after further thought, Anubis felt that Seo Joo-Heon had fulfilled all the requirements. Seo Joo-Heon just smiled when he knew he had fulfilled all the requirements given by Anubis, and in the end they formed a contract. After the contract was formed, there was a sign of Anubis on his arm that showed that the contract had been successfully made. And after the contract was made, Seo Joo-Heon asked Yoo-Jiha to repair Anubis' relic, and hearing that, Anubis was relieved and happy. But hearing the next sentence from Seo Joo-Heon, who would only let Yoo-Jiha fix it a little bit, made Anubis angry and unacceptable. Seo Joo-Heon was just in case Anubis would betray him if he let Yoo-Jiha fix it completely. Even though it was true, but Anubis still did not accept Seo Joo-Heon's decision. In a place that looks like a temple, the sound of someone calling another person priest is heard. The woman is seen meeting with the person she called priest to report an intruder in her area. The person called priest seems to wake up from his sleep because he heard the report given by the woman, and with his angry eyes, he will kill the intruder in the worst way. Several women were seen blocking the way of Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo-Jiha. Seo Joo-Heon asked their leader to come out to meet her now, and with that, a man came out from behind the woman. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw the man, became wary of him. The man then belittled Seo Joo-Heon by saying that Seo Joo-Heon would die right now because Seo Joo-Heon was surrounded by the women there. The man named Simon continued his sentence, and it seemed that the women had been completely controlled and had been possessed by the souls of a very large number of brave soldiers. But Seo Joo-Heon, who heard that, just smiled, and with one flick of his hand full of power there was a big explosion there. Soon several skulls began to banket from the ground. The 2,000 war soldiers were resurrected by Seo Joo-Heon, who had made them come back to life using the relic of the god of death. Seo Joo-Heon smiled confidently when he saw the face of Simon, who turned into fear and panic now, seeing the lifeless soldiers surrounding the area and waiting for the next order from Seo Joo-Heon. Simon was panicking now that he was surrounded by Seo Joo-Heon's soldiers of war, and when Simon told the women to attack, they were all silent because even though they had been controlled, their instincts were still running not to give up their lives in front of Seo Joo-Heon's soldiers. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon's soldiers were still waiting for orders from Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon began to offer the women to surrender if they did not want to get hurt, and with one threat from Seo Joo-Heon, the women knelt before Seo Joo-Heon now. Meanwhile, Simon, who saw his soldiers kneeling in front of Seo Joo-Heon, became panicked and scared now. Seo Joo-Heon also gave orders to his soldiers to arrest Simon, and quickly the soldiers belonging to Seo Joo-Heon took Simon hostage. Seeing Simon, who was scared and admitted that he had prepared everything for the 7 great tombs, managed to attract the attention of Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon was happy because he heard that one of the tombs would be formed around here. What will Seo Joo-Heon do now? Will she succeed in conquering the tombs? Seen Seo Joo-Heon, who was still threatening Simon with his soldiers. After getting information about the 7 great tombs, Seo Joo-Heon released Simon. Simon fell to his knees when Seo Joo-Heon released him and asked for his forgiveness. Seo Joo-Heon, who had gotten what he wanted, did not do anything to Simon now. But on the other hand, it was seen that the women were angry at Simon. A notification window appeared saying that now Simon's harem was transferred to Seo Joo-Heon, and therefore Seo Joo-Heon had qualified to use the Avesta relic. Simon, who saw that his harem had changed hands, became shocked and frightened. Seo Joo-Heon also ordered the women to beat Simon, while Simon, who saw the women were ready to beat him, was even more frightened, and the night ended with no one knowing what happened to Simon. Seen the time has shown daylight in the city of Japan. Heard Yoo Ji-ha and Seo Joo-Heon, who were discussing to stay here temporarily because of the appearance of the 7 great tombs. Yoo Ji-ha also asked what he would do with the many women who became fans of Seo Joo-Heon. It was Seo Joo-Heon got up from his seat and came out to meet his fans. As soon as Seo Joo-Heon came out, he told them all to go home, but it made them disappointed because Seo Joo-Heon just kicked him out. Seo Joo-Heon also offered the women to join his fan club. The fan club was the idea of Sasaki, and he was also the one who would later organize the fan club. But among the crowd of women, Seo Joo-Heon's eyes caught a silhouette of a familiar woman. The woman seen by Seo Joo-Heon was Seo-Ah, a former member of his team in his previous life. Seo-Ah used to work as an informer and spy because of her great ability in that field. Seo-Ah used to be very close to Seo Joo-Heon, and after her search, Seo Joo-Heon found out that at this time Seo-Ah was in Japan. Back with Seo Joo-Heon, who was looking at his relic that he was going to upgrade using the popularity he had by using the Avesta relic. Some relics were upgraded from rank D to rank C, but for the Shakespeare relic, it had been upgraded to rank S. Although no relic could be upgraded to God rank yet, but this upgrade was more than enough for a start. Seo Joo-Heon had made a contract with the relic Avesta, and even he got the relic Casanova's perfume from Simon before. Seo Joo-Heon looked at the relic with a terrifying look, making the relic a little scared. Seo Joo-Heon heard something strange from outside her hotel room, but Yoo Ji-ha thought that it was just the room attendant cleaning the rooms of the hotel's guests, and when Seo Joo-Heon opened the door, she could see Seo-Ah in her maid outfit. Seo Joo-Heon laughed at the sight of Seo-Ah working as a room cleaner because it was very unlikely unless Seo-Ah had other intentions. After sensing the relic of Seo-Ah, Seo Joo-Heon dismissed her. Seo Joo-Heon walked closer to the slightly anxious Seo-Ah and held her shoulders. Seo-Ah, who was treated like this, became unhappy with Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon interrogated Seo-Ah because she had been spying on Seo Joo-Heon since she was at the cafe before and even now when she was at the hotel. But Seo-Ah dismissed the statement and pretended not to know what Seo Joo-Heon said. Hearing Seo-Ah, who denied that she was spying on Seo Joo-Heon, Seo Joo-Heon also revealed about the relic that Seo-Ah was wearing. It made Seo-Ah become surprised and wary of Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw Seo-Ah, who was surprised, smiled happily because his guess was right this time. Seo-Ah had no choice but to attack Seo Joo-Heon with her Reaper-type relic. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw the relic used by Seo-Ah, was a dangerous relic. With a blink of an eye, Seo Joo-Heon closed the door to her room. Yoo Ji-ha, who saw Seo Joo-Heon trying to escape, was angry because from the beginning Seo Joo-Heon was the one who challenged Seo-Ah. Seo Joo-Heon realized how dangerous the Reaper-type relic that can steal other people's souls is. Yoo Ji-ha, who heard that the relic was very dangerous, his face became scared and panicked. Yoo Ji-ha also told Seo Joo-Heon to apologize to Seo-Ah in front. But it seems that Seo Joo-Heon was a little late because the angry Seo-Ah opened the door of Seo Joo-Heon's room using the relic, and immediately the hand entered and opened the door of Seo Joo-Heon's canard. They both ran from the door with Seo Joo-Heon, who was still trying to think of the next plan. Seo Joo-Heon ran towards her relic that she placed on the floor, and as the hand was about to reach it, Seo Joo-Heon, who was a little panicked, held onto the relic and hoped that it would help her. The hand of fire was now right on the side of Seo Joo-Heon's face, but when the hand was about to attack, a force warded off the attack of Seo-Ah's relic that made it unable to get close. Seo-Ah told her relic to attack Seo Joo-Heon, but the relic could not get close to Seo Joo-Heon for some reason. Seo Joo-Heon knew that it was one of her relics that made Seo-Ah's relic fail to attack her, but the problem was that she didn't know which relic could counteract the attack. Seo-Ah's relic named Gildal became frightened and eliminated her. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon, who saw that Gildal had disappeared now, he was more free to defeat Seo-Ah. Seo Joo-Heon also took out a rope relic from under his sleeve and made Seo-Ah bound by the rope relic so that she could not escape. Seo-Ah asked Seo Joo-Heon to let her go, but Seo Joo-Heon didn't want to do that because she would start interrogating Seo-Ah. What does Seo Joo-Heon want to know from Seo-Ah, and what relic warded off Gildal's previous attack? Seo Joo-Heon started to interrogate Seo-Ah about the person who told her to spy on Seo Joo-Heon, but Seo-Ah refused to tell Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw that Seo-Ah refused to tell her, put a little pressure on her as she told Seo-Ah to confess. Seo-Ah thought of a plan where she would only give her useless information while she tried to buy time. Seo-Ah said that she was only investigating the women who disappeared at the temple yesterday, and she spied on Seo Joo-Heon because the women were all fans of Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard that, was just a little confused because Seo-Ah must have something else to hide. Seo-Ah was annoyed that Seo Joo-Heon said as if she knew everything about Seo-Ah. Seo-Ah's cunning plan went well by buying time and waiting for her partner to save her. Seo-Ah saw a couple of Seo-Ah colleagues coming from the direction of the hotel elevator, but the two people had to be surprised when they saw a dog that was Anubis on the floor as if guarding the hotel room belonging to Seo Joo-Heon. The two people approached Anubis, who they thought was asleep, and just passed him by, but as soon as the two of them passed Anubis, Anubis woke up with his red eyes burning brightly and disturbed the two colleagues of Seo Ah who tried to enter the room. Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Ah, who felt that her plan had failed, was surprised when Seo Joo-Heon had predicted someone who would come to help her. Seen outside the room, Anubis angrily attacked Seola's partner for calling her a common dog. Seo Joo-Heon, who saw the chaos outside her room, just smiled and took out her knife to threaten Seola's partner. As soon as Seo Joo-Heon approached, she slashed her knife at the bracelet worn by Seola's partner. Seo Joo-Heon recognized the red bracelet he got from the Seo Ah colleague. The bracelet came from a group from China called Red Flowers. Not only that, Seo Joo-Heon could also find out the rank of the owner of the bracelet with that symbol, which meant the person in front of him was a corporal named Liao Wei. Liao Wei seemed surprised that Seo Joo-Heon could easily recognize him. Seo Joo-Heon realized that they had a connection with China. Pandora was a group formed by America and Europe, but instead of joining Pandora, China formed its own alliance with Russia. Knowing that, Seo Joo-Heon was about to ask them something. What were they doing in Japan? And worse, they were watching Seo Joo-Heon. Seo Joo-Heon looked at them with a stressful look to make them confess. Seo Joo-Heon threatened them using Anubis. Seo Joo-Heon told Anubis to bite that person because that person had also mocked him as an ordinary dog some time ago. Anubis, who was angry, was about to attack Liao Wei, but Liao Wei, who had been frightened, gave up and would tell Seo Joo-Heon the truth. Liao Wei said that they were only spying on Simon, who had kidnapped the Japanese women, and Simon had also promised Liao Wei to help him conquer the 7 Great Tombs. Hearing that the information about the 7 Great Tombs came from the Chinese side instead of the Americans made Seo Joo-Heon interested to hear more, because previously Seo Joo-Heon thought that Simon came from America and worked for Kara. But Liao Wei denied it and said that Simon had betrayed Kara. Seo Joo-Heon was satisfied with the explanation given by Liao Wei. And this time Seo Joo-Heon asked how China could find out information about the 7 Great Tombs. Seo Joo-Heon just smirked happily, hearing what Liao Wei would say. A few days later, seen Seo Joo-Heon and Yu Jiha, who were walking in Atsu City, after getting information from Liao Wei a few days ago. Now Seo Joo-Heon knows if they have hacked the system from Pandora to get that information. Pandora has a technology called Pandora System, and because of this, Pandora will monopolize the relics and tombs in the world. However, it seems that China has a very skilled hacker so that they get information from Pandora. But even though China managed to hack Pandora's system, the people from China are also not much different from the people from Pandora, and it would be better for them not to interfere with the relic and free others to get the relic they want. Yu Jiha wasn't sure about releasing the Chinese before because they might threaten and trouble Seo Joo-Heon, but Seo Joo-Heon didn't care about that, and she also didn't release the Chinese for nothing. Seo Joo-Heon had previously left a relic before letting him go, because Seo Joo-Heon would make Seo Ah one of his colleagues, because the skills and abilities that Seo Ah had would greatly help Seo Joo-Heon in the future. Seo Joo-Heon doesn't want to rush because he will still get information from China with the relic he had pinned on Seo Ah before. Seo Joo-Heon also still has another problem. He needs to find out about the relic that can withstand the power of Gildal. As a moment ago, when the taxi driver asked their destination later, they were going to Kyoto now. The taxi driver became uncertain because some time ago in Kyoto there was a major incident. And as Simon said, a tomb appeared in Kyoto after 3 days. They asked with Simon. Seo Joo-Heon, who did not want to be trapped in the tomb, they decided to move. And sure enough, the taxi car was stopped by several pillars and buildings that seemed to have collapsed to the ground. Yoo Ji-ha realized exactly if they were now in a tomb with Roman architecture. Seo Joo-Heon saw that the city of Kyoto had been covered by several pillars and buildings with Roman architecture. According to Pandora, the area of the tomb this time reached 1,027 square kilometers, which had closed the city of Kyoto. Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo Ji-ha got out of the taxi and stepped forward to go deeper into the tomb, but strangely, even though they both arrived late, the entrance to this tomb was still sealed, indicating that no one had managed to enter the tomb yet. Seo Joo-Heon smiled happily because the other group had not managed to conquer this tomb, and sure enough, when they assumed that the other group was also in this place, one of Seo Kwon's subordinates came to them angrily. Seo Joo-Heon knew who was talking to him at this time because they met at the party yesterday. The Seo Kwon subordinate blamed Seo Joo-Heon for only telling the truth and was angry at Seo Joo-Heon. Another voice came and calmed the Seo Kwon subordinate, and the voice managed to attract the attention of Seo Joo-Heon. When Seo Joo-Heon looked in the direction of the voice that had just come, he was very surprised because he saw someone he once knew. The man also greeted Seo Joo-Heon with a small smile on his face. Who is that man? And why does Seo Joo-Heon know that person? The man also apologized to Seo Joo-Heon for what his boss said to Seo Joo-Heon before. The man also introduced himself as Yang Chen from Seo Kwon's TBM group. Yang Chen said that he didn't want to be an enemy of Seo Joo-Heon and gave Seo Joo-Heon his business card to contact him later. Yang Chen would help Seo Joo-Heon if Seo Joo-Heon felt uncomfortable, but it seemed like Seo Joo-Heon thought differently. Seo Joo-Heon tore Yang Chen's card, which made Yang Chen surprised to see it. Seo Joo-Heon also threatened to kill Yang Chen if Seo Joo-Heon saw him again in front of him, while Yang Chen, who didn't know anything, became frightened by the threat given by Seo Joo-Heon. And the reason Seo Joo-Heon behaved like this with Yang Chen was because Yang Chen was the one who made Seo Joo-Heon and his team enter the tomb that took his life in his previous life. Yang Chen is someone trusted by Seo Kwon to get rid of Seo Joo-Heon and promised to raise his rank if Yang Chen succeeded in doing so. But the problem is, Yang Chen used to be a member of the team led by Seo Joo-Heon. Even though he was the last person to enter his team, but Seo Joo-Heon still treated him like a brother. Even Seo Joo-Heon did not expect that Yang Chen would betray him. At that time, Yang Chen refused to join the team. Seo Joo-Heon entered into the last tomb because he made excuses if he was sick. Yang Chen also handed over a bag full of relics that would help Seo Joo-Heon to escape before his departure. Not only that, Yang Chen also asked Seo Joo-Heon to leave Yoo Ji-ha and considered if Yoo Ji-ha would only be troublesome for him. Seo Joo-Heon had rejected Yang Chen's proposal at that time because, after all, the role of Yoo Ji-ha was very important. But Yang Chen persuaded Seo Joo-Heon to leave Yoo Ji-ha at that time because he really wouldn't be useful, considering that the tomb to be conquered this time was very easy. And finally, Seo Joo-Heon was persuaded by Yang Chen not to bring Yoo Ji-ha on his mission this time. And when Seo Joo-Heon and the rest of his team members entered the tomb, they experienced difficulties because the tomb was one of the most difficult tombs they had ever faced. And worse, the relic promised by Yang Chen that would make him escape turned out to be a relic to trap them so they couldn't escape. And with that incident, Seo Joo-Heon had to see his team members die before his eyes. And Seo Joo-Heon also almost died at that time if not for the help of the crow. Remembering that incident made Seo Joo-Heon want to thank the crow for helping him come back to life. Seo Joo-Heon still looked sharply at Yang Chen, who still didn't understand why Seo Joo-Heon was so rude to Yang Chen. But for Seo Joo-Heon, it would be very difficult to try to be friends with someone who had betrayed him first. Seo Joo-Heon also avoided Yang Chen's question and left together with Yoo Ji-ha. The two of them walked into the tomb, and it certainly made CEO Kwon's subordinates surprised because entering with only two people like that would only lead them to a big disaster. But Seo Joo-Heon just answered him with a confident smile. CEO Kwon's subordinates were still angry, but Seo Joo-Heon and Yoo Ji-ha continued to walk until they reached the door of the tomb and entered it. After they got inside the tomb, the first thing Seo Joo-Heon did was to analyze the place, while Yoo Ji-ha was impressed by the ancient Roman building that made him feel like he was on vacation in Italy. And just as they entered the main door of the tomb, they had seen several people who had collapsed on the street, but what made it strange was that they were not injured or dead, they were just asleep. Yoo Ji-ha also felt a strange thing happening with himself, who suddenly became sleepy. Seo Joo-Heon was not affected at all because he had immunity in his body, because the effect of the relic was very strong and had spread widely. Seo Joo-Heon pulled Yoo Ji-ha away from the main door. Seo Joo-Heon found out that the tomb this time was the Tomb of Sloth and explained it to Yoo Ji-ha, who was confused if this tomb was one of the 7 deadly sin, which consisted of pride, wrath, envy, sloth, lust, greed, and gluttony. And their tomb this time is the Tomb of Sloth, which makes everyone who approaches it will be affected by the effect of laziness and become sleepy. It can be seen that some people there are sleeping soundly because of the sloth effect of the tomb. Yoo Ji-ha, who now understands his situation, is getting better after hearing the explanation from Seo Joo-Heon. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon took out the Anubis relic and called him out. Anubis, who appeared, was confused because there was nothing he could do here unless Seo Joo-Heon defeated the laziness in his own head, but Anubis ended up underestimating humans who were already lazy. Seo Joo-Heon also asked Anubis to be quiet and follow him, and using his relic rope, he tied up Yoo Ji-ha's body and dragged him inside. But Seo Joo-Heon, who heard Yoo Ji-ha, who did not accept, told him to be quiet because Yoo Ji-ha would be affected by the sloth again. While Seo Joo-Heon, who had immunity in his body, just walked casually because he was not affected by the effect. But Seo Joo-Heon still had to be fast because the longer it would be, the more dangerous it would be for him. Anubis slightly praised Seo Joo-Heon, who could withstand it so far, but Seo Joo-Heon needed to walk further to reach the entrance. Anubis also confirmed that Seo Joo-Heon had to be strong to withstand the effects of the sloth. Seo Joo-Heon, who heard the suggestion from Anubis, had another plan, which was to make a hole in the tomb. Anubis certainly did not understand what Seo Joo-Heon meant. Seo Joo-Heon explained that he would make a new path so that he did not have to pass through the entrance, and said that Seo Joo-Heon would blow up Anubis because of the size of this tomb, and quickly Seo Joo-Heon blew up Anubis but did not make him completely dead. After that, a huge explosion occurred. Yoo Ji-ha became aware because of the explosion, and right after he realized Seo Joo-Heon threw the relic of Anubis and asked him to fix it, the two of them were able to enter the tomb with the path that Seo Joo-Heon had made. And the more they entered, Seo Joo-Heon realized that now they were in the Domus Aurea, or the Golden Palace. Seo Joo-Heon also helped Yoo Ji-ha to remember something about an ancient Roman emperor that Yoo Ji-ha should know very well who Seo Joo-Heon was referring to. Yoo Ji-ha also seemed to be trying to remember, but when Yoo Ji-ha tried to remember, a huge fire broke out in front of him, and seeing the huge fire made Yoo Ji-ha remember an emperor who was famous for his fire, Emperor Nero. Yoo Ji-ha panicked a little when he found out who the tomb belonged to, an emperor who was famous for being a tyrant in the past. Seo Joo-Heon had to put out the fire in front of him first so that he could go deeper into the tomb. Seo Joo-Heon told Yoo Ji-ha to suck up the fire using the Van Gogh relic because later he would use the fire as one of his weapons. Yoo Ji-ha just obeyed and sucked up the fire like what Seo Joo-Heon said. And after the fire was extinguished, the splendor of the place returned. But shortly after that, Seo Joo-Heon heard the sound of many people behind him. It seemed that the people who were asleep in front of the entrance had woken up, and now they were heading towards him. But of course, Seo Joo-Heon would not let them enter that easily. Seo Joo-Heon also devised a plan to stop those who followed him. What plan will Seo Joo-Heon do, and how will it stop the people who are following her?